Okay.
Recording in progress.
Hi, this is Ron Bioing. I'm the vice chair of the Citizens Commission for Performance Measurement of Tax Preferences. And our chair will be joining us possibly a few minutes late, but we do have a quorum. So we're going to get started here shortly. Just a couple of notes up front. Video conference participants, ask you to mute your audio. Commissioners should leave their video on, and other participants should keep their video turned off unless they've been recognized by the chair. And then, like I say, if anyone wants to speak, then raise the hand, and hopefully I'll be able to see that and to figure that out and actually recognize and give persons a chance to talk. So we do have a quorum, so we will get the meeting going here now. So first off, I'll do a roll call. So I'll just name off each of the commissioners and just indicate that you're present. So Diane Lords-Dick.
Present.
Dr. Sharon Kyoko.
Present.
Andy Nofsiger-Meadows.
Present.
Representative Jerry Paulette.
Present. Sorry about the delay.
No problem. State Auditor Pat McCarthy. And well, I can see she's on there, so we were on mute, but that's okay. We got you. And then Dr. Grant Forsyth, the chair, will be joining us as we move forward. So our first item for action today is approval of the September 9th, 2021 meeting minutes. Those have been posted on the website. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a move, and I believe we have a second as well. And so we'll go ahead and just do a roll call vote. I'll start with Andy Nofsiger-Meadows.
Aye.
And Diane Dick.
Approved.
And Dr. Kyoko.
Aye.
All right. And it's aye from the chair, the vice chair. So 4-0, that passes. So we'll move on to the next item on our schedule, which is the proposed 2022 meeting schedule. And I don't know if that's something that you can share. Yeah, there it is on the screen, so everyone can see that. So these are the proposed meetings for 2022 for our schedule. And no need for me to, I guess, to e-read those off, as everyone can see those. I guess the first question is, are there any conflicts that any commissioners have noted? I'm seeing shaking of heads from Diane and Andy. How about you, Sharon? What is it? What do those look like to you?
So usually I have a conflict with class today, so I canceled my classes for the day. So I see the October meeting is always on a Wednesday. But other than that, I can make that work for my schedule.
Would there be a better day than Wednesday for you in terms of you normally not have classes on, say, Tuesdays or Thursdays, or?
Well, Tuesdays or Thursdays would work better, but I don't want to make the schedule go haywire.
Well, no, I mean, we're far enough out. Let me ask the JLARC staff. Would there be any problem that JLARC staff would see with possibly moving this meeting to either Tuesday or Thursday, either October 18th or October 20th?
No problem at all from the JLARC staff. This is, we've traditionally been Wednesdays, so that's just why we've used this as a starting point. So yeah, no problem at all. If it works for commissioners better to select a different day on virtual any of these, we can move them around.
Does that work for the other commissioners? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I can certainly move the Wednesday, October 19th one. If we're also looking to move the Wednesday, May 4th one, I could move that to Tuesday, May 3rd. I could not move it to Thursday, May 5th.
How about that, Dr. Kioka? Would you be anticipating being in class during May as well?
No, it's only the October meeting. That's when my classes are
Okay.
scheduled. I don't teach in May. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm flexible on all other days.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and is there any preference for anyone offhand between Tuesday and Thursday? No? Well, then let's go ahead with, I'm just going to propose that we change the Wednesday, October 19th to Tuesday, October 18th. Rest of it to stay the same. And we can always revisit this later if Grant, when he joins, if he has any problems. But for right now, and do we need to vote on that, Keenan, or is this just
No, just informational, but once we've
Okay.
these are the ones we think we're going to do, I'll confirm that Grant doesn't have a problem. And then we do publish them with the code revisor's office and on our websites so the public knows.
Okay, perfect.
I just want to double check. Did we accommodate Andy's request for May 4th to May 3rd?
Oh, no, I was just saying that the Wednesday, May 4th is fine. I
Okay.
just couldn't move it to Thursday if you also needed the Wednesday, May
Oh,
1.
no,
Yeah,
I don't.
no,
Okay.
I'm
perfect.
good on May 4th. Thanks for checking.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I think we have the meeting schedule handled. So the next item that we'd like to address here is kind of I guess it's a good and a bad. In the sense that Stacia Holler, who has been our Attorney General staffing person for our attorney for our committee for a long time, has been such a pleasure to work with. She's getting an opportunity to ride off into the sunset. So, I mean, that's a good thing. And we're all, quite pleased for her to be able to do that. But we're going to miss her so much. So, that's the sad part of it today. In a moment here, I'm going to give Stacia an opportunity to introduce our Kristen Lamson, who will be our new attorney for the committee. But I noticed that Grant is here, and I know that he had some things. I'll just briefly, before I turn things over to Grant, say, Stacia, it has been an absolute pleasure to work with you. You are a consummate professional and great sense of humor as well. And we'll miss seeing you on a regular basis. But thank you for all your assistance. And then Grant, if you want to take over here.
Thank you, Ron, for managing for me until I got off another meeting here in Olympia. Stacia, yes, I mean, I think I speak for current commissioners, past commissioners, who I know many who have talked very highly about you. We feel very good about you being with us, even though Keenan told me that you're actually a division head and have great responsibilities. So that does mean a lot to us that you were willing to do that. And just let me say, I did notice that you won an award this year, a leadership award. Is that not correct?
That is correct. It was a excellence in a statewide excellence in leadership award. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and judging from the comments, I say this not funny at all, is that yes, yay, you were definitely well loved by your colleagues, and you should be. So thank you again for your long years of service. It's been a great pleasure. You're one of the reasons why this is one of the best people I work with, is this whole group. So I appreciate your presence. So
thank you. And before I speak, I see that State Auditor McCarthy, and as much as I think I'd like to cut her off, I think that would not be appropriate in my position, because I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah, raised hand. Pat, I think you might be on mute.
I think her audio is not working.
Oh, her audio. Just a minute.
And
She's almost-
I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't.
Pat, I think you might still be having audio problems.
Okay.
I can still read lips. I think she says she's going to talk to you later, probably,
Okay.
and wishes you well.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Auditor McCarthy. For everyone's information, I also oversee the legal work for the state auditor's office, and for better or for worse, I've had a fair amount of interaction with Auditor McCarthy in recent time due to the data security incident that they suffered, and worked with her for that. So just to give a little context. So Chair Forsyth, if I might, this is a hard one. I've represented JLARC off and on since 1990, back before it was JLARC, back when it was the Legislative Budget Committee. I also had the incredible pleasure of serving on the JLARC staff, doing the tax work, right when this whole process began in, I think it was 2008 that I joined JLARC. I've been with the Attorney General's office for off and on for over 30 years. And yeah, it's a little hard. I've really enjoyed working with JLARC. I very much, the commitment and the work of this commission in every iteration that I've worked with is just outstanding. The volunteer time that you all commit to it and the work that you do is just, it's such a pleasure to work with you. As Grant noted, I am also the division chief of the Government Compliance Enforcement Division. I lead a staff of about 50 in that capacity. I'm actually, my retirement date is February 1st, but we have hired an attorney to take over my legal work. And I'll introduce Kristen here in just a second. And then I will be replaced as a division chief here in the future. So I like to joke I'm being replaced by 2 attorneys rather than just one. But again, thank you so much for all the kind words. Thank you for indulging my love of my Gonzaga basketball team every year and letting me brag just a little bit each time when that's over. I just have so thoroughly enjoyed working with all of you, and I'm leaving you in excellent hands, and it is hard to say goodbye. With that, though, I'd very much like to introduce Kristen. When Kristen's done, I do actually get to give you one last piece of advice before I sign off in my official capacity here. So I am incredibly pleased that we were able to hire Kristen Lamson. She's an experienced public sector attorney. It is not often that we are given the opportunity to hire somebody with this much experience into the office. And frankly, I wasn't going to do anything else because I care so deeply about all my clients, and I wanted to make sure I was leaving them in good hands. So, Kristen, I'd like if you go ahead and introduce yourself and provide your background. I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. And boy, this is probably the 4th or 5th meeting that I've sat in with Stacia as she introduces me and gets a lot of kind words. So I hear and understand that the mantle being passed and the shoes to be filled are quite big. So I'm taking that seriously, and I appreciate hearing all the kind words for Stacia and setting the expectation. In any event, my name is Kristen, and I have been a public sector attorney for a little over 20 years. Most recently, I've been an assistant city attorney in Seattle. My family and I moved to Olympia about 2 years ago, and this is my first stint at the state level. But I've been mostly working with local governments for my career, doing a lot of general government work, a lot of municipal utility and municipal finance work. So I've done a lot with governance and, pretty much the Jill of all trades at the local government level. So it'll be an interesting shift of audience at the state level for me. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all at some point in person and working with you and learning more about your commission. So thanks for the opportunity to say hello this morning.
Good to have you. We appreciate you coming aboard. You'll find us, I will say, just generally to be a pretty low maintenance group. Once in a while, the chair, me, has to be reined in, but it's not very often. So I think Stacia has found it to be a great group to work with. I think you'll find it to be a great group to work with as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Keenan.
Keenan, yep.
If you don't mind, I would like to say a couple comments too, if you would allow.
Yes, please forge ahead, Keenan.
It's not often the staff get to have the last word, but I think I'm the one who probably has had the privilege of working with Stacia more than just about anybody on this call in so many capacities. I think I've lost count of all of them. And as Stacia said, even as not only as I greatly benefited from her wise counsel over the years, even had a stint where she was working with me directly as a staff member. It's really been a great honor and privilege to work and learn from you, Stacia, over the years. And not only is Stacia just a rock star attorney, but she brings so much more to the state with her vast knowledge of state government and her keen commitment to making sure that she really understands the business of all of her clients. That has been such a great asset that I just can't say more thanks to her for what she's done, not only for us, but for the entire state. So I wish her the best, but it's with bittersweet comments that I wish her off. And I know, the one thing that just gives me a little comfort as she's vacating her role is I know what a great job she does mentoring, grooming, and recruiting staff. And I'm sure Kristen is going to be just a fabulous addition to the team. So thank you so much, Stacia, and welcome, Kristen.
Thank you, Keenan. We have been through many years, many interesting studies and things, and I, you've been a great boss, coworker, client, and friend, and I really do thank you for all this. I do want you to know that the depth of my dedication to you is I'm coming to you from Orcas Island, where I am currently on vacation, visiting my son, who works up on Camp Orkila up here, and what a beautiful place to be hanging out. I'm very blessed. If I might, my last, maybe perhaps official responsibility here is I do want to remind the commissioners that once you have completed your comments, and those have been made the official version, that at that point, pursuant to the commission's policy, you may destroy any of your notes or other records that you've kept during this cycle, and in accordance with the Public Records Act and your policy. So I wanted to remind you of that can be done once it is formally adopted. And Commissioner Forsyth, I know the question often comes up in your situation because you may be continuing to desire to keep your notes until you've presented it, and that is certainly appropriate. Okay. I do encourage you, though, when the time comes for all of you to go ahead and take the steps to in accordance with the law, destroy those records so it doesn't leave issues of future discovery issues. With that, if there's any questions, I would be glad to answer. And if not, you're such kind words, and and it has been quite a ride. 35 years as over 35 years as attorney, and most of that with the state. So thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners? Oh, Diane, it looks like you want to say something. There you go.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to work with you, and I've really appreciated your guidance and service over the years. Sorry for the singing toddler.
I take that as further praise, frankly. So
she's not screaming.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say go Bulldogs in your honor.
I'm sort of watching Pat. It looks like maybe you're going to try again. looks like you went off mute. Nope. Still not fixed. Sorry about that, Pat. Well, good. I think then with that, will just say one last thing. You know, you and I were, Stacia, both in college in the 80s, and I will just say much has changed. It's you know, it has, you know, it is interesting. The pandemic has proved that it's not the 80s anymore. So
Absolutely. Yes. And again, public praise makes me very uncomfortable, but thank you anyway for doing it. It's nice to know my work has meant something. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, great. So I think we'll move on to discussion of adoption of commissioner comments. And I'm thinking this will be pretty straightforward. I'm hoping anyway. So following the same path that we have before, JLARC will be available to make any changes to any of the things that have been proposed in terms of the final comment. They'll be able, I think, be able to do that online and show us. So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at the green, what I call the green comments. These are the comments or the preferences where there really was no controversy or differences between the commissioners. And we'll do this where we vote on them as a group. So we've got 2 in the green, we've got the rest are in the yellow, and we have none in the red, which is good news. So let's start by looking at the green comments. This was the manufacturer's deferral and the targeted urban tax preference. Is there any comments from commissioners, or would they like to make any final comments about these before we vote on them as a group? Okay, and so now that my screen is a little bit, my pictures are a little bit fewer, I just want to make sure that staff helps me see the raised hand feature if there is any. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So with that, do I have a motion to accept the commission, the chair's reconciliation proposal for the green group for the 2021 tax preference reviews? So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, with that, we'll do a roll call vote. Okay, if you're in favor, please say yay or yes. Opposed, please say nay or no. Andy Meadows,
Yes.
Ronald Buing,
Yes.
Diane Dick,
Yes.
Sharon Kyoko,
Yes.
and Grant Forsyth is yay or yes. So approved. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the yellow comments. And again, I would say in most of these, the difference is relatively small between commissioners. It was just maybe a tad bit of wordsmithing. So with that, do we have any comments on the yellow group? Not hearing any. I will just say for Commissioner Meadows, Andy, there was one, I think it was the last preference in the list. You did have a comment about that. I think you were the only person that had a comment, and I did not smith that comment in any way. Does that enrage you at all?
No, I'm fine with that. I trust your judgment.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. The only reason I didn't is that you were the only one that had anything written. The rest of us had nothing to say, so I thought I'd roll the dice, but I just wanted to make sure you're okay with that. And I think staff is moving in that direction now. Yes, there you go. So, all right. So not hearing any comments or objections to the chair's reconciliation proposals for the yellow group, do I have a motion to approve commissioner comments, the reconciliation for the yellow group for the 2021 tax preference reviews?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, with that, we'll do a roll call vote. And again, just as before, yay or nay. Ron Buing,
Yay.
Andy Meadows,
Yay.
Diane Dick,
Yay.
Sharon Kyoko,
Yes.
and I'm a yay/yes. With that, okay, so that approves then the comments that will be provided as reconciliation comments to the legislature and the public. And before I go, I also forgot to mention that we do have I believe Kathy Olean's on the phone today from the Department of Revenue. So if you have any other issues, she will be available for questions. Is that still the case, Keenan?
This is Kathy. I am in fact here.
You are here. Okay, thank you, Kathy. Okay. All right, so with that, with no further comments about that, let's take a look at the study questions for the 2022 tax preference reviews, and we'll need help from staff to do that.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? All right, good morning, Chair Forsyth, members of the commission. My name is Zach Freeman, staff to JLARC. I am joined by Dana Lynn and Scott Hancock, and we'll be presenting our proposed study questions for upcoming reviews of tax preferences for commute trip reduction programs, food processors, nonprofit hospitals, and nonprofit cancer centers and clinics. I'll begin with our review of the study questions for the commute trip reduction tax preferences that are intended to encourage use of commute alternatives. Specifically, these are credits for employers giving financial incentives to employees to use commute alternatives. These credits can be claimed against business and occupation or public utility taxes for up to 50% of the incentive amount. Employers must apply for the credits each year, though they are not required to be in the statutory CTR program in order to be eligible. Credits are subject to several caps, including a $60 per employee, $100,000 per employer, and a statewide cap of $2.75 million. Claims beyond the $2.75 million are prorated by the Department of Revenue. Following a 2012 legislative auditor recommendation to review and clarify the preferences, the 2015 legislature extended the preferences out to 2024 and also added a tax preference performance statement. According to that statement, the credits are intended to reduce traffic congestion, automobile-related air pollution, and energy use. And the preference directs JLARC to recommend extending the preferences if the review finds that the percentage of Washingtonians using commute alternatives has increased. As such, our study will address 4 questions. First, how many employers have CTR programs? How many claim the tax credits? And how many employees do those programs cover? Second, what is the value of the tax credits? And how does this compare to the total financial incentives employers provide to their employees? Third, have CTR programs contributed to reductions in traffic congestion, air pollution, and energy use? And to what extent can those reductions be attributed to the tax credits? Finally, how has the percentage of Washingtonians using commute alternatives changed since 2015? Our study contact information is here, and I would be happy to answer any questions now before handing things off to Dana to discuss food processors.
Questions from commissioners? Okay. Not seeing any?
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't figure out how to do the hand thing.
Oh, sorry, Ron.
No, I was trying to figure it out and couldn't quite figure it out. I was just, one of the things that's happened over the last year, or last year and a half, or during the pandemic is, of course, the existence of remote work alternatives coming up. And commute trip reduction is traditionally focused on getting people into the offices, And I was just wondering if there might be a if it might be appropriate in this context when studying all of this to perhaps maybe in gathering information from some of the participants, the business participants in the program, if there would be the potential for maybe using, expanding the incentive, or would they use an expanded incentive that might, for example, encourage remote remote work, so to speak, thereby eliminating, not just reducing some of the problems with the commute, but eliminating some of the commuting problems. And it just seemed like this was, given the last year and a half, 2 years, that's this is kind of I think a newer development in the sense of adding the idea of remote work into more than just commuter trip reduction.
Yeah, and I would just say currently incentives for remote work are not eligible under the credit. However, some of the actual CTR programs themselves do encourage the use of remote work, and we have been reaching out to some of the municipalities and businesses to kind of talk about how that shifted during the pandemic. So I think to the extent that we can within the scope of our study, we're certainly kind of considering some of these pandemic related effects to the program and to the credit.
Commissioner Kyoko.
I just had a quick question on energy savings, since at least the symbol you used there was for fuel, and now you're moving to an era of electric vehicles, whether that applies here or not.
Yeah, I think it certainly applies, and I think some of the information that we've looked at from WashDOT kind of takes into account the current mix of vehicles that are on the road to calculate what the average miles per gallon is to track those reductions. I believe our latest conversations with WashDOT, they indicated that the percentage was, it hadn't kind of met the threshold where it could materially impact when we're looking at kind of in aggregate, but they certainly do consider that as not just commute modes change, but the type of vehicles change. And that certainly affects what the average miles per gallon is and what some of the emissions rates are per mile or per trip. So I think that's to be considered.
Yeah, this is, both those questions, both the issues raised by commissioners, I think are excellent. One thing I would point out too on the vehicle side is there is a pretty rapidly number increasing of charging stations across the state. And so even though we might not be at that threshold, that things are starting to shift. So this could be an interesting one and a little bit tough to measure to some extent, but it'll be interesting how it goes for you. But and I mean, I will also say, into Commissioner Buing's point, that you do notice definitely the traffic flows are different because you still have a lot of people working from home. So yeah, lots of things changing in that respect. Any other comments about that? Okay. Forge ahead, staff.
Thank you. This is Dana Lynn, and the next 2022 tax review that we'll highlight for you is a review of a set of preferences provided for food processors in Washington. This review will cover 6 different preferences that have the stated intent to create and retain jobs and continue tax relief that has been statutorily provided for Washington's food processing industry. Our review will cover 3 specific industries that have current tax preferences. Those are processors for fruit and vegetable products, seafood products, and dairy products. And they also include certain sales, wholesale sales, and in one case for seafood products, retail sales in certain industries. These particular tax preferences currently enjoy a B&O tax exemption, so they don't pay any B&O tax on these certain activities. That exemption started in 2005 and 2006 for these 3 industries and has been extended a couple of times. Currently, statute does require that these expire July 1st, 2025. At the end of the tax exemption, the 3 industries will receive a preferential rate of about a third of what they have now, 0.138 versus 0.484, which is the standard B&O tax rate for wholesaling and manufacturing activities. That rate will take effect when the exemption ends July 1st, 2025. And under current law, the preferential rate for the fruit and vegetable and seafood products industries has no expiration date. However, the dairy products industry does have an end to their preferential rate of January 1st, 2036. The legislature has extended these, as I noted, a couple of times already, and the last time they extended the exemption and the following preferential rate was in 2015. JLARC staff have reviewed these a couple of times as well. The last time we reviewed them was in 2014, prior to that 2015 expiration date. These tax preferences do have a stated intent, and that was to create and retain jobs and to continue tax relief for these industries. In 2015, the legislature did provide a few areas that they wanted us to cover, and in addition, we've added a few more questions that we will attempt to answer in our review. The first of those is how many businesses and which businesses claim each exemption, and how much tax has been exempted each year. The second question is, what's the change in total employment for this set of businesses that claim the exemptions? We'll also look at what is the change in the total taxable income for the businesses that use these exemptions. Next, we'll look at what percentage of total taxable income do the exemptions represent for the businesses that claim them. We'll also look at how the preferences impact these 3 industries, dairy, fruit and vegetable, and seafood processing in the state. And finally, we'll take a look at how the preferences have affected the cost of business for Washington's food processors compared to the cost of doing business for these processors or similar processors in other states. Here's our contact information for our study team, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I actually have I think a couple. One is, if I'm interpreting this correctly, does dairy have a noticeable differential treatment compared to the others in terms of, I think it was the expiration date?
There is a different expiration date for dairy. Yes, dairy had some changes made to the specific tax exemption and the following preferential rate, and it was deemed that those would expire 10 years after they were changed. So the expiration date for the preferential rate for dairy is 2036. We double checked that with the Department of Revenue because sometimes it's a little unclear if it's not specifically stated in the statute, but that is the case for dairy, not the case for fruit and vegetable and seafood, which did not have the kind of change that was made to the dairy processor.
So excluding dairy, the other people are still 2025. Is that correct?
Everybody switches from the full exemption to a preferential rate in 2025. And then in 2036, dairy loses the preferential rate under current law, but fruit and vegetable and seafood will continue to receive that because they have, there is nothing that has been done and no statutory expiration date.
Got it. The chair was confused again. So there's a.
Oh, no, it's confusing. We had to seek guidance from the Department of Revenue to ensure that we were interpreting it correctly.
So there's a tax exemption now, and so if it expires, they go to just a preferential rate. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
There's another set of laws. There are 3 sets of laws that give them an exemption, 3 sets of laws that give them a preferential rate, and then one of those does expire in 2036.
Okay, well, this will be an interesting one to review. That sounds pretty complicated. Okay, that answers my question.
Great.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any commissioner comments? Okay, not seeing any. We can move to the next, I believe.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Scott Hancock. This next tax preference is a property tax exemption for nonprofit hospitals. Nonprofit hospitals have had a property tax exemption in Washington since the founding of the state in 1889. In 1973, the legislature limited the property tax exemption for hospitals to nonprofit hospitals specifically. And since 1989, the legislature has required hospitals of all ownership types to provide charity care. This preference was reviewed by JLARC in 2007, and since then there have been many changes in healthcare provision, including the passage of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. This preference doesn't have a stated intent. We infer the purpose is to support hospitals providing community benefits, including charity care. Nonprofit hospitals are exempt from federal income tax, and in exchange, these organizations are expected to provide community benefits, including charity care. Charity care is the provision of medical services provided with no expectation of compensation. So patients are not billed for charity care. And like I said in the beginning, in Washington, hospitals of all ownership types have been required to provide charity care since 1989. So our study will address 4 questions. 1, to what extent has the preference been used, and what are the beneficiary savings? 2, what community benefits do beneficiaries provide? 3, waiting for the slide update. There we go. Is there information that allows for comparison of community benefits between beneficiary and non-beneficiary hospitals? And 4th, how does the value of beneficiaries' charity care compare to the tax savings? And how does this compare to charity care provided by non-benefiting hospitals? This slide displays the contact information for the members of the study team, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
We have a question from Commissioner Kyoko.
Morning, thank you. I have a couple of questions. Do you know how many nonprofit hospitals there are in the state? And are they required to report their charity care to the Department of Revenue on an annual basis?
There are approximately 45 to 50 nonprofit hospitals in the state. And for charity care, there are actually a few different bodies that figure is reported to. First and foremost, the Department of Health receives charity care reporting from all hospitals, not just nonprofit hospitals. Secondly, charity care figures are captured in Medicare cost report data. And for nonprofit hospitals, they're also reported in those hospitals' IRS Form 990 Schedule H. That's a requirement for meeting the 501c3 status that the vast majority of those hospitals have.
Okay, so the data collection effort here is not onerous.
There's not for no. There's three sources available, and my expectation is that those all match. We will see.
Yeah.
So, this is the chair. Just real quick on the on this preference. This almost sounds like a policy preference to me, to some degree. I mean, it sounds like even though there's no, if I go back to the slide, you said there's no stated objective. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, this sounds like an explicit kind of policy. It'll be interesting how this looks at the end of the review. So this is one of these things where you have to wonder, as Ron would say, is this really a preference or is this maybe something else? But it'll be interesting what the final report says. Commissioner Kyoko?
I just have one last quick comment. It would be good to see the regional distribution of those nonprofit hospitals, especially given the fact that we know rural hospitals are closing at a much higher rate. And access to charity care is actually going to be far much more difficult for folks who are in rural or low population areas. So if we could just graph that out for us for the 50 or so nonprofit hospitals so that we can see where they're located, that'll be good.
Yeah, great point, actually. Yeah, that would be useful to know. Commissioner Buie.
Yeah, I was curious. It's originally, I don't know if originally, I don't know if this was even necessarily true or not, but it seems to me that a lot of the charity care nonprofit hospitals have traditionally been supported by religious organizations, and some of this may have originated to an extent from, although it doesn't specify that, may have originated from the standpoint of, well, that there's a general kind of a church and state separation, so to speak, issue that comes in with respect to properties that are owned and operated by religious organizations. And I just throw that out there just from the standpoint of when we're kind of looking at the policy, and does any of that play into this application of this exemption. And I'm very much as Dr. Kyoko pointed out, that with the rural, just especially with the as we've seen during this between the pandemic and some of the opioid epidemics and things like that have been out there, I think the stress on providing hospitalization services in rural areas has really been, and so that would be very helpful to understand for that from a policy perspective as well. Whereas it might not be as critical, perhaps in an urban area like Seattle, that care might otherwise be available. Something like this may be absolutely crucial in some of those rural areas.
Yeah, all good points. Well, we want to make sure you're not bored, Scott. So
I'm not bored. These are all considerations that we've talked over during our meetings. So it's good to know that there's interest.
Yeah,
amongst our audience as well.
I've always found staff is happiest when they're a little bit overworked. So. Any other questions on the nonprofit hospitals? Okay, then moving on to nonprofit cancer clinics and centers.
Yes. So this next preference is also a property tax exemption for nonprofit cancer centers and treatment clinics. And the inferred intent of this preference is to provide these facilities with similar property tax treatment as the nonprofit hospitals we just spoke about. Again, the inferred intent is to provide similar property tax treatment as nonprofit hospitals. Under state law, these facilities are not considered to be nonprofit hospitals. So as a result, they cannot benefit from the nonprofit hospital property tax exemption. These are facilities that provide prevention, detection, and treatment services, often to cancer patients in an outpatient setting. And beneficiaries of this preference must be recognized by the IRS as a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization, or they must have been formed by a municipal hospital corporation. This review will address similar areas as the previous preference. Specifically, we'll be asking ourselves, to what extent has the preference been used? What are the beneficiary savings, and how does this compare to the anticipated usage? What community benefits do these beneficiaries provide? And how does the value of the beneficiaries' charity care and other community benefits compare to the tax savings? Again, this is our contact information for this study. And again, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Kyoko?
I guess I don't have any question. I just want to say the comments I said earlier for the hospitals apply for the cancer clinics as well.
Yeah.
during our preliminary research, we found that these facilities are very often tightly related to some of the nonprofit hospital organizations. So we'll be doing a lot of our work on these two studies in concert with one another.
Yeah, that's excellent. Any other comments? Okay, and I believe that is the end of the study questions for 2022. At this point, I would request that Keenan and Eric discuss the final steps regarding this year's comments and how things go from this point.
Thank you, Chair Forsyth. So this really completes the cycle of work for the commission for this year. But it doesn't stop there, as you probably remember. So next steps are we will append your comments to the reports in addition to the responses we got from some of the state agencies that are involved. And those become a record and a portion of the report. And the report will then come back to the full JLARC committee that Representative Paulette chairs in our December JLARC meeting. So they've heard the staff reviews previously back in July, but now they'll have the benefit of the agency comments and your comments. And so they will take those into account. They hear the reports again. It's at the committee's discretion if the committee wants to make their own comment to append to it. And once that is completed, then the real JLARC work has been done before the legislature. This is all, of course, advisory to the other committees of the legislature. We do have a requirement then to conduct a briefing on the results in front of Senate Ways and Means and House Finance, which usually takes place in the early part of the legislative session when they convene in January. And then that will be that will finish everything for the 2021 reviews, even though that goes into 2022. And of course, staff will be already commencing work on the reviews to take place for next year. And Eric, did I miss anything important?
I think that covered it.
Couple questions from the chair. So do we have a firm date for the meeting in December for the JLARC committee?
Yes, we do. And Eric is probably looking that up right now.
21st, I believe.
No, the December meeting, Eric?
Yes.
Should be early.
I apologize, December 1st.
There we go.
It is December 1st, okay. Okay, and do we have a time of day where that will take place?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, okay. I'm just trying to think about my own schedule here a little bit.
Yeah.
And so for January, as I recall, that usually hasn't been settled at this point.
Yeah, usually it takes the it requires information from the chairs of those committees as they're planning the first part. So the challenge, of course, that you have, Mr. Chair, is sometimes the advance notice on that is not a lot because they're working through their scheduling issues and bills and work sessions they're planning. So we will, of course, be making sure we're in close contact when it does take place. Unless Representative Paulette has any other insight to offer, I anticipate at this point our December JLARC meeting will probably still be in a remote setting.
I would anticipate the same. There's no decision about the legislative session, but things aren't looking up really for in-person committee meetings.
So
but it'll make your commute easier, Grant.
Yeah, well, yes. Well, I mean, it's always good to sort of make a showing, but it's a long trip for 10 minutes usually. So this method works pretty well, although I'm sure the legislature would like to be back in normal operation one day. So, and for my fellow commissioners, so what happens is usually there's a bit of time allocated for me to make a few statements after staff has presented their findings. Usually there's quite often questions to me from legislators. And, you know, the general rule is anybody who would like to could join me on the call. It's not something that's strictly just for me, but as chair, it's just part of my regular duties. So something to think about. So I guess when when we have a, you know, when we have sort of, well, we do have a firm date for the December meeting, but in all cases, you might want to send out a reminder to commissioners that this is coming.
We'll definitely let people know that anybody else who would like to participate could join as well.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, it looks like Commissioner Bueling has a question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't so much a question as I just wanted to indicate that we had, because you were talking about dates, we looked at the schedule and we have tentatively moved the final meeting of the meeting schedule for next year. For the last meeting, the equivalent of this meeting next year, I moved it to the immediately previous day, Tuesday. And if that's fine with you, that works out to avoid a conflict on Dr. Kyoko's schedule.
Yeah, to my knowledge, when I looked at the, well, so while we're on the phone here, I did look at the dates, the original dates, everything looked pretty good. Could you, could staff provide me with the original date that was?
Originally it was Wednesday, October 19th, and now the proposal is move it to Tuesday, the 18th.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. That'll work great.
Great. So I will get those dates published for you.
Yeah. Yep, that's good. Yep, perfect. Okay. Any other comments from staff about the process? Okay. Nope. All right. So, real quick, I believe there's the final, there's a couple of things I want to cover. There's the chair will remind the audience that anyone wishing to provide written testimony on the agenda topics can submit comments to, and there's usually a slide. There we go. So if you are listening today, this is the information you would need to provide written testimony. So we'll just leave that up for a few minutes here. So using the last remaining time here, I just want to thank again staff for another great year. I will say it was great to have a quiet year after the last few, which have been sort of intense. So I'm very grateful for staff for all their work. And this also includes all the agency people who routinely come to these meetings. I'm very grateful for your work as well. And I'm certainly grateful for the work of my commissioners because, you know, busy times, complicated times. And so I'm grateful for you willing to commit to do this. And I'm certainly also grateful for Ron handling the beginning of the meeting for me today as well. So kudos to everybody. Any other comments? Okay, with that, seeing nothing else, we'll go ahead and call this meeting adjourned, and I will hopefully see everybody next year.